So, let's move on to talking about Pete Buttigieg and how he thinks Sanders is a terrible candidate that will fail at and alienate GOP and independent voters, even though everything for the last 4 years has said otherwise. So, Pete Buttigieg warned Sunday that Bernie Sanders runs the risk of alienating Republicans, even though in Vermont he takes about 30% of the vote, and he's tied with Andrew Yang and Tulsi Gabbard for polling the most Republicans. But who needs facts or logic when you have Pete Buttigieg trying to win for the CIA? Maybe someone else. I don't know. Someone. And independent voters, another group that Sanders consistently kicks ass at. I don't know. And that he's worried that he'll lose against Donald Trump, saying there are a lot of folks out there who are ready to... By the way, you ever notice that after Barack Obama got in office and said folks, every Democrat just says folks for anything?
I feel like they said folks before that.
I don't know. Maybe it's just me. But I want to make sure that everyone feels welcome in the coalition we're building, except if you're a minority or you're young or, from South Bend. Buttigieg's team sent 2 emails to supporters warning of Sanders' rise. One message said, quote, "We can't risk going back to the same Washington playbook that's failed us in the past because, as we all know, Bernie Sanders' playbook, basically Trump's, basically Bush's, basically Obama's. I couldn't tell the difference if I tried." Buttigieg told CBS he is seeking support in parts of Iowa where Sanders cannot deliver his message in liberal and conservative counties to build a coalition of progressives, moderates, and what he likes to call future former Republicans. That's a McKinseyism if there ever was one. So continuing, the article kind of goes through some yada, 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 but then eventually they get to this part where they're bringing up Bloomberg because... if you're a Republican yesterday and you're a Democrat today, but you also gave $120 million in the process, that's A-okay. Asked how he would contrast himself with Mike Bloomberg, mayor of New York, which has over 8.5 million residents, compared to South Bend's 102,000. The 38-year-old Buttigieg said he considers the small size of the Indiana city he led as mayor to be an advantage. That's kind of the point, he said. There's so many South Bends out there, many of them right here in Iowa. Well, it's not tailoring that message for any... Pete Buttigieg always just feels like he says whatever he thinks is going to get him the most people in the moment. And I was saying before the show, I really feel at this point he's kind of like, well, what happens if you take Hillary Clinton and then just merge them with Mitt Romney? It's that's kind of what you get, this Boy Scoutish, we'll do whatever it takes, we'll say whatever it takes, we'll remember something, I can speak a couple languages, blah, 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 blah. And that is not going to work that well in America right now. Buttigieg also defended his current approach to winning support from minority voters, despite reams of data showing he is struggling, choice word, to win favor amongst Asians, blacks, and Latinos. We will continue with... Okay, look, I'm going to read his response to this, and I want you to tell me in chat where the substance is. We will continue with that all of the above strategy to reach out to minority voters. So we're not reaching out to them, so we're going to keep reaching out to them. While consistently pulling in the top tier in Iowa and New Hampshire, Buttigieg continues to struggle, especially among African-American voters. Yeah, man, he should just get all those supporters he claims to have in South Bend to just put the word out, call their friends, call their family, let them know. He's a great mayor. He definitely didn't tear my house down while I was still living with it. Things of that nature might be helpful. It's just So in 2016, when Bernie Sanders was running, the media hounded him endlessly for not having a commanding lead with African-American voters. So Bernie Sanders can't win. You can't win without the black vote. Can't win without the black vote. Bernie Sanders doesn't have the black vote. Bernie Sanders doesn't matter. Irrelevant. Buttigieg has 5 black people voting for him, and they're people on his payroll. And they're it's difficult. He's working on it. There's no difference in how people are looking at this. Of course not. But Buttigieg has several missteps while seeking African-American support. Last week, he rearranged his campaign schedule to attend Martin Luther King Jr. Day events in South Carolina amidst criticisms that he would be skipping them to attend similar events in Indiana. Indiana, the home of the KKK, wonderful place to go for that. Earlier in the cycle, the mayor's campaign had used stock photos of a Kenyan woman on his campaign's website with his plan to end systemic racism in the U.S. Now, I want to point out, this article heavily simplifies everything that happened there. This is his Douglas plan. The Douglas plan that he just faked support for. He's like, oh, are you black and prominent in the South Carolina? Well, now you're my supporter. And just learned very recently this actually has to do with, what was the show called again? What news? Some news?
Some more news.
Some more news. They just did a really big piece on it, and they had a very small section that was on this part, and I learned a little something. The way that he got those endorsements, what he did was he sent out an email to just, I guess, as many people as he could find that were black, that were professionals, that had email addresses, and said to them at, like, this is at 12 p.m. or so, and the message is like, thank you for endorsing my plan. This is the Douglas plan. Here's the stipulations. If you decide that you don't want to support my do this endorsement, no later than 4 p.m., respond to this email, which maybe is in your spam folder. Maybe you don't check this work email that often. Maybe it's not an email you use anymore. Send me a response before 4 p.m. indicating you want to opt out of my endorsement. My God, I should just email every American and say Hardlands Media is the best and most popular and most well-known news organization in the country. And if you disagree with this, please return within 2 hours and we'll take your name off the list. That's wonderful. That's just how you do it. That's how you get these names. But it didn't even stop there. There were people that did reply and said, hey, don't put me on this. Didn't matter if you're a Bernie supporter or whatnot. You were on it anyway. Enjoy. You're with Pete Buttigieg. If you're black, you don't get to say Pete Buttigieg tells you what to think.
I have to point out real quick, it's definitely definitionally backwards, right? An endorsement is explicitly, you don't even use the word opt-in, but if we're going to use that terminology, endorsements
opt out.
Right, endorsements would be explicitly opt-in. You can't, be required to opt out of endorsing something. Right? Endorsement implies active participation in expressing an opinion. It's, yeah.
Okay, and so we continue. Of course, they don't mention that here. They literally just are like, oh, it was a stock photo thing. Good job. Who actually wrote this article? Where do we have our thing? This is story 5. Thanks, MSN. Doesn't surprise me they didn't really do any amount of research. And again, if this was Bernie Sanders doing the exact same thing, they would have articles and after articles chewing him out, but they don't have anything. They have to just make stuff up about him. And I love this wording. I love this wording. This is such an MSN. We really like you and we don't want to hurt you, but we're going to, try and speak the truth. And his complex relation with law enforcement and minority communities in South Bend remains fodder for his critics, not his terrible dealings with his community, bulldozing houses that people lived in, not going around processes, firing the black chief of police at the behest of white donors, replacing them with white officers who were very ecstatic that that they no longer had a black boss, even though that guy was in the middle of, dealing with corruption and racism in the force, things of that nature. He doesn't even want the vote of the people of his own town, but he, of course, wants to use the credit of being that. But again, that's not how we should frame it. It should be that this is fodder for his critics. It's not his fault. It's just a complex relationship that people are taking out of character. Anyway, we continue with Pete Buttigieg's powerful rise, his strong fourth place run. Pete. I want to really quickly read out a super chat from DCK Punk. Thank you for the $5. Premium package Pete. The best thing since sliced bread got price fixed. That's another thing that goes back to McKinsey. Pete Buttigieg is a empty vessel who, very much like Clinton, is willing to be filled for whoever pays him the most. He knows how to lie. Maybe he's part of the CIA. Maybe he's CIP. Maybe he's not. All we know is he's worked with a dozen agencies. That if Pete was part of the CIA and it came out, I don't know how many people would go, "Oh my God, I didn't see that coming." Everyone would expect it. Pete is probably I don't know. Would Pete be a bigger threat to America than Trump? That's a legitimate question.
Well, he certainly would work to enact the will of the CIA and intelligence agencies a lot more readily than Trump would. Trump certainly butts heads with a lot of the agenda of our unelected power base in this country, which is an unelected power base. Make no mistake. So I think he would grease those wheels to some degree, but ultimately Trump has basically bent over to what they've wanted eventually every time.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I think enough pressure gets put on him, and I don't think he has enough of a backbone or cares enough about some of the anti-war principles that he actually ran on to actually put up any kind of real resistance to what the unelected power base in this country wants him to do.
So we have another super chat. Thank you so much, Denise Gibson 53. Thank you so much for the $10. What the hell is Buttigieg offering us? Exactly. He claims to be beating Bernie on Morning Joe, and again, I saw that clip. Factually untrue. Factually untrue. If we want to go with the polls, which everyone seems to think are the rule of law, I will vote for Tulsi, the only one progressive who can handily beat DT Donald Trump. Thank you so much for the super chat.
Thank you. What is Pete Buttigieg offering us? I would submit that he's offering middle-aged soccer moms one of those really clean-cut millennials to look at. Oh, that's about it.
So I think it was actually in that same video that they said that Pete is what boomers, like, you know, we have a lot of people that would be boomers watching us. Thank you, not you guys, but like the MSN,
the stereotypical
the
boomer,
stereotypical boomers think an ideal millennial should be.
Yeah.
Look
at him. He wears a suit. He combs his hair.
He's a Rhodes Scholar. He speaks languages.
Look how
many
smart
of them.
he is. What does he have any policy or platform ideas, or what direction would he take the country in, or how would he govern? Oh, it seems like the people in South Bend don't like how he's governing.
But they're just black people, so who cares?
But he has all the black endorsements. They didn't opt out.
I saw his Douglas plan. They got lots of black people to say it was good.